The metallic taste of recycled air still haunts me from when I first pulled the trigger on Governor Maltheus. My name is Kaine Vex, formerly Callidus Temple-trained, currently nothing more than a broken tool cast aside by the Imperium. I failed to kill my target, and that failure damned an entire world. You think that makes me weak, incompetent, but you don't know what I've seen in the decades since that botched assassination. The Officio Assassinorum doesn't simply retire failed operatives. We become something worse than death, living reminders of Imperial fallibility. They strip away our polymorphine treatments, our neural conditioning, our very identity, and then they watch us suffer. But the real horror isn't the torture they inflict. It's what happens when a planetary assassin survives long enough to remember what it feels like to be human again. This is my testimony. This is my warning. Chapter 1. The Perfect Weapon. For 37 years, I existed as the Imperium's perfect killing instrument. My body was a temple of engineered lethality, every muscle fiber enhanced, every nerve pathway optimized for death. The Callidus Temple had taken a feral child from the underhives of Necromunda and forged something that barely qualified as human anymore. The neural conditioning was absolute. When the Officio Assassinorum activated my mission protocols, my personality would simply disappear. What remained was pure function, a biological weapon aimed at the enemies of mankind. I had eliminated 43 high-value targets across 17 systems, each kill executed with surgical precision that left Inquisitors nodding in satisfied approval. My chambers aboard the Temple ship Silence Eternal were Spartan by design. A sleeping alcove barely wide enough for my enhanced frame, a meditation circle inscribed with litanies of execution, and a wall-mounted case containing my tools of trade. Phase sword, digital weapons, poison injectors, and the precious vials of polymorphine that allowed me to become anyone, anything the mission required. The other Callidus operatives and I rarely spoke. Speech was inefficient, emotion a liability. We communicated through combat drills and shared glances that conveyed tactical assessments. Sister Vaya had been my closest approximation to a companion. We had trained together for over a decade, our enhanced reflexes perfectly synchronized during sparring sessions that left the training servitors in pieces. When High Lord Assassin Draken summoned me to the briefing sanctum, I knew this mission would be different. The chamber reeked of sacred oils and the ozone discharge from active cogitators. Draken stood before a massive hololithic display showing the industrial world of Korvain Prime. 30 billion souls, laboring in vast manufactorums that supplied 3 neighboring sectors with armaments. Governor Maltheus has been compromised. Draken's voice carried the authority of 10,000 years of imperial tradition. Genestealer cult infection confirmed at the highest levels. The Planetary Defense Force shows signs of hybrid infiltration. Standard imperial response would be exterminatus, but Korvain Prime's industrial output is too valuable to lose. The hologram shifted, showing me detailed architectural plans of the governor's palace, guard rotations, and biometric data on Maltheus himself. A corpulent man in his 60s, augmented with crude mechanical limbs that spoke of wealth rather than necessity. His face bore the soft corruption of power unchecked, but I could see the subtle wrongness around his eyes that marked genestealer taint. The cult has not yet reached critical mass, Draken continued. Eliminate Maltheus before the Patriarch can complete the planetary takeover. You will have a narrow window intelligence suggests the final corruption ritual is scheduled within the next Terran month. I accepted the mission with a simple nod. Questions were inefficiency. Doubt was heresy. I was the Emperor's will made manifest, and his will was death for those who would betray humanity. The polymorphine treatments began immediately. My bone structure shifted, my facial features flowing like wax under the careful ministrations of the temple's biosculptors. Within 72 hours, I had become Sergeant Helena Voss of the 47th Korvain PDF Regiment, a mid-level officer with clearance to access the governor's palace during routine security briefings. The pain of polymorphine transformation never faded, no matter how many times you endured it. Your skeleton liquefied and reformed, your organs shifted position, Your very DNA rewrote itself according to the mission parameters. Most baseline humans would die from the shock, but Callidus operatives were bred and trained to channel that agony into focus. As the temple ship translated into the warp, I entered the meditation trance that would carry me through the journey to Korvain Prime. In that state between consciousness and oblivion, I reviewed every detail of the mission, every possible variable and contingency. Maltheus would die, the cult would be decapitated, order would be restored. I had no concept then of how completely I was about to fail. The translation back to real space brought me to full alertness. Through the viewports of my insertion craft, Korvain Prime appeared as a rust-brown sphere wreathed in industrial smog. The planet's surface was an endless sprawl of manufactorums, hive spires, and mining complexes that glowed with the heat of constant production. Somewhere in that mechanical maze, Governor Maltheus was preparing for his final transformation into something no longer remotely human. My insertion went perfectly. The stolen PDF uniform and falsified credentials passed every security checkpoint. Sergeant Helena Voss reported for duty with exemplary records and impeccable documentation, because the Officio Assassinorum's forgers were artists in their own right. Within 6 hours, I was standing in the governor's palace, close enough to smell the fear sweat of the human servants who still served their corrupted master. The palace itself was a monument to imperial excess, its corridors lined with marble quarried from a dozen worlds and decorated with battle standards from successful campaigns. But underneath the grandeur, I could sense the subtle wrongness that marked genestealer presence. Shadows fell at unnatural angles. Servants moved with the uncanny coordination of a hive mind's influence. The very air carried a psychic weight that made my enhanced nervous system twitch with warning signals. I had 72 hours to identify Maltheus's routine, locate his private chambers, and execute the kill. The mission parameters were clear. Make it look like natural causes, ensure no evidence of imperial intervention, and extract before the cult could respond. Simple, efficient, final. But as I walked those corrupted halls, playing my role as just another PDF sergeant, I began to notice something the intelligence briefings hadn't prepared me for. The servants weren't afraid of their genestealer-tainted master. They were protecting him, not from duty or fear, but from something approaching love. That should have been my first warning that this mission was already doomed. Chapter 2: Signs of Corruption. The governor's daily routine was maddeningly predictable, which should have made the assassination simple. Every morning at 0600 hours, Maltheus attended dawn prayers in his private chapel. At 0800, he reviewed production reports from the Planetary manufactorums. Midday brought meetings with department heads, and evenings were reserved for state dinners with visiting dignitaries or local nobility. But 3 days of observation revealed disturbing patterns that made my enhanced instincts scream warnings. The chapel services weren't dedicated to the Emperor. Instead, Maltheus led his staff in chanted prayers to something called the Star Children. Clear genestealer cult terminology that should have triggered immediate purge protocols from any loyal imperial citizen. Yet the human servants participated willingly, their voices rising in harmonious devotion that carried genuine faith rather than coerced compliance. I had infiltrated dozens of corrupted worlds, and this felt different. The usual signs of genestealer domination, fear, paranoia, violent suppression of dissent, were completely absent. During my 4th night in the palace, I broke into Maltheus's private study to plant surveillance equipment. The room was a shrine to scholarship, its walls lined with books and data slates covering subjects from agricultural optimization to xenobiology. But hidden behind a false panel, I discovered something that made my blood freeze in my enhanced veins. Medical records. Thousands of them, documenting the progression of genestealer infection across Korvain Prime's population. But these weren't the crude field reports of a cult spreading through violence and mental domination. They were detailed scientific studies, tracking infection rates, genetic compatibility, and most disturbing of all, consent rates. The infected weren't being forced into transformation, they were volunteering. I transmitted an emergency burst to the temple ship, requesting clarification of mission parameters. The response came within hours, delivered by encrypted astropathic message that burned itself into my consciousness. Mission stands. Execute target immediately. No further intelligence required. But I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The next morning, I volunteered for palace guard duty that would put me in direct contact with Maltheus during his routine security briefing. As Sergeant Voss, I stood at attention while the governor reviewed the overnight reports from his planetary defense coordinators. Maltheus was clearly infected. I could see the subtle physical markers that indicated advanced genestealer gene code integration. His movements carried the fluid grace of xeno-reflexes, and his eyes held the multifaceted awareness of a hybrid mind. But when he spoke to his staff, his voice carried genuine warmth and concern for their welfare. "The mining quotas for Sector 7 are down 12%, he was saying to Administrator Kelton, a nervous man whose augmetic eye clicked constantly as it cycled through data feeds. "Are the workers experiencing health difficulties from the new extraction procedures?" "Nothing serious, Governor," Kelton replied. "Some respiratory irritation from the refined promethium vapors, but medical says it's within acceptable parameters." "Acceptable to whom?" Maltheus's question carried sharp authority. "Schedule me for a personal inspection of Sector 7 tomorrow. If our people are breathing poison to meet Imperial quotas, we'll find another way." This was not the behavior pattern of a genestealer patriarch preparing his world for consumption. Patriarchs were apex predators, viewing human populations as breeding stock and feeding material. They didn't concern themselves with worker safety or production efficiency beyond what served their reproductive needs. After the briefing, I followed Maltheus to his private chambers under the pretense of delivering security reports. The governor's personal quarters were surprisingly modest: a sleeping alcove, a small dining area, and a work desk covered with agricultural improvement proposals. No trophies of conquest, no ritual altars, no evidence of the casual cruelty that marked most corrupted imperial officials. "Sergeant Voss," Maltheus addressed me directly, and I felt my enhanced nervous system spike with alarm. His voice carried harmonics that resonated strangely in my modified auditory cortex. "You've been watching me quite intently these past few days. Is there something specific troubling you about palace security?" The question was innocent enough, but his eyes, those multifaceted, alien eyes, seemed to look straight through my polymorphine disguise. For a moment, I thought my cover was blown, that he could somehow see past the biological masquerade to the assassin beneath. "Just maintaining proper vigilance, sir," I replied, keeping Sergeant Voss's voice steady and professional. "Recent intelligence suggests possible cult activity in the outer hives. Can't be too careful." Maltheus nodded slowly, but his expression carried something I'd never seen in an infected subject before: genuine sadness. "Yes, the transition has been difficult for some of our citizens. Change always is, even when it's ultimately beneficial. But fear and ignorance breed violence, Sergeant. It's our responsibility to guide people through these changes with compassion rather than force." He moved to the window overlooking the palace courtyard, where groups of citizens were gathering for what appeared to be some kind of celebration. I could see the telltale signs of genestealer infection in roughly half the crowd: the enhanced physical coordination, the subtle facial restructuring, the uncanny synchronization of movement that marked hive mind influence. But they weren't celebrating conquest or domination. They were celebrating a harvest festival, with children laughing as they chased each other through displays of agricultural bounty from the outlying farming communes. "Sergeant," Maltheus continued, his voice carrying a weight of authority that seemed to bypass my conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper. "What do you know about the Emperor's vision for humanity?" The question should have been simple to answer. Every imperial citizen learned the basic catechisms of faith and duty from childhood. But as I opened my mouth to recite the standard responses about mankind's destiny among the stars, I found myself genuinely considering what he was asking. "The Emperor protects," I managed finally. "Humanity must be pure, unified, strong against the threats of an uncaring galaxy." "Yes," Maltheus agreed. But what if we've been thinking about purity in the wrong way? What if the greatest threat to humanity isn't contamination from without, but stagnation from within? He turned to face me directly, and I could see the conflict in his alien eyes, the struggle between human memory and xeno-instinct, between individual will and collective consciousness. The genestealer strain isn't just infection, Sergeant. It's evolution, controlled, guided evolution that could give humanity the tools we need to thrive instead of merely survive. My hand moved unconsciously toward the concealed phase sword at my waist. Every fiber of my conditioning screamed that this was heresy of the highest order, that Maltheus needed to die immediately before his corruption could spread further. But something held me back. A growing realization that killing him might not solve the problem I'd been sent to address. "You're talking about xenocontamination," I said carefully. "The Imperium has clear policies about genetic purity." "The Imperium has policies about many things," Maltheus replied with a bitter smile. "Most of them written by men who've never seen a child starve in the underhives, or watched good people die from diseases that alien biology could cure in minutes. Sometimes, Sergeant, the greatest loyalty to the Emperor's vision requires disobedience to the Emperor's bureaucrats." That night, I transmitted another emergency burst to the Temple ship. "Target shows unexpected behavior patterns. Request additional intelligence on cult structure and objectives. Mission parameters may need revision." The response came faster this time, and with it came pain that drove me to my knees in my quarters. Neural override protocols, activated remotely through my conditioning implants, flooded my consciousness with artificial certainty. Kill the target. Complete the mission. Questions are inefficiency. Doubt is heresy. But even as the override impulses tried to crush my growing uncertainty, a small part of my mind remained free, the part that remembered being human before the Temple claimed me. And that part whispered a question that would ultimately destroy everything I thought I knew about duty, loyalty, and the true enemies of mankind. What if we're the monsters in this story? Chapter 3. The Truth Unveiled. The neural override protocols lasted 18 hours, leaving me curled in my quarters while my enhanced nervous system fought against the artificial compulsions burning through my consciousness. When the pain finally subsided, I found myself changed in ways that terrified me more than any enemy I'd ever faced. The conditioning was breaking down. For the first time since my recruitment into the Callidus Temple, I could feel genuine emotion bleeding through the psychochemical barriers that had shaped my thoughts for decades. Fear, curiosity, and most dangerous of all, doubt about the mission I'd been trained to complete without question. I activated my secure communication array and sent one final message to the Temple ship. "Experiencing equipment malfunction. Request immediate extraction and technical support." The response was immediate and final. Mission parameters unchanged. Complete objectives within 72 hours or face termination protocols. The Emperor protects. They were going to kill me if I didn't kill Maltheus. But more than that, the casual dismissal of my concerns told me that the Officio Assassinorum had expected this scenario. They knew something about this mission that they hadn't shared in the initial briefing. I needed answers, and there was only one place to find them. That night, I infiltrated the palace's central data core, a heavily shielded chamber 3 levels below the main complex. My Callidus training made bypassing the security systems trivial. The guards never saw me coming, and the ones who might have heard something found themselves facing a person they trusted implicitly thanks to carefully applied polymorphine adjustments. The data core contained the real history of Korvain Prime's transformation, and what I found there shattered every assumption I'd made about genestealer cults and imperial policy. The infection had begun 47 years ago when a damaged Tyranid vessel crash-landed in the planet's northern polar region. The initial imperial response was textbook: quarantine the crash site, incinerate everything within 50 kilometers, and monitor the population for signs of contamination. But Governor Maltheus's predecessor, a man named Korvain, had made a different choice. Instead of simply burning out the infection, Thaley had authorized a secret research program, led by the planet's most brilliant xenobiologists and Medicae personnel. They didn't just study the genestealer organisms, they tried to understand them, to find ways the alien biology could benefit human civilization instead of destroying it. The breakthrough came after 15 years of careful experimentation. The research team discovered that genestealer genetic material could be modified, refined, stripped of its hive mind compulsions, while retaining the beneficial mutations that made infected subjects stronger, faster, more resistant to disease and environmental hazards. What they created wasn't a traditional genestealer cult. It was a new form of human evolution, guided by scientific understanding rather than alien instinct. The data files included video recordings of the transformation process. I watched citizens of Korvain Prime voluntarily submit to genetic modification procedures that enhanced their physical capabilities while leaving their human consciousness intact. Children born with the modified genestealer genes showed remarkable intelligence, creativity, and emotional stability compared to baseline human norms. But the most shocking revelation was buried in a classified communication log between Governor Thale and the Segmentum Solar High Command. The Imperium knew about Korvain Prime's experiments. They had known for over 2 decades, and they had been quietly studying the results, while publicly maintaining their policy of absolute xenocide. Selected worlds throughout the Segmentum were being used as testing grounds for controlled evolution programs. Korvain Prime was just one of dozens of planets where the Imperium was secretly exploring ways to enhance human capabilities using alien biology. The current mission wasn't about stopping a genestealer cult. It was about destroying evidence before the wider Imperium discovered what their leaders had been authorizing in secret. I found myself shaking as the implications became clear. The Officio Assassinorum wasn't protecting humanity from corruption. They were protecting corrupt Imperial officials from accountability. Maltheus and his people weren't traitors to the Emperor's vision. They were living proof that the Emperor's vision could evolve beyond the rigid dogma that currently strangled human progress. But there was worse to come. Buried in the deepest levels of the data core, I found communication logs from the Temple ship that had brought me to Korvain Prime. High Lord Assassin Draken had been in contact with Segmentum Command for months before my mission began. The orders were explicit: eliminate all evidence of the evolution program, including Governor Maltheus and his senior staff, then stage a genestealer uprising that would justify complete planetary sterilization. Korvain Prime's 30 billion inhabitants were going to die to protect the secrets of men who had never set foot on their world. I staggered from the data core with my enhanced mind, reeling from the weight of revelation. Everything I had believed about my purpose, my duty, my very identity as an instrument of Imperial will was collapsing like a house built on rotten foundations. In my quarters, I tried to contact Sister Vaya aboard the Temple ship, hoping to find some anchor of certainty in the storm of doubt consuming my thoughts. The communication was brief and terrifying. Kaine, her voice carried confusion and pain. Why are you asking these questions? The conditioning protocols, they're burning through my consciousness like acid. The overrides are getting stronger. Vaya, listen to me carefully, I whispered into the encrypted channel. There's something wrong with this mission. The target isn't what they told us. The people here aren't monsters. Static filled the channel for long seconds before her voice returned, flat and emotionless. Mission parameters are clear. Doubt is inefficiency. Questions are heresy. Complete your objectives, Brother Kaine, or face termination. The line went dead. Sister Vaya, the closest thing to a friend I'd had in decades, was already lost to the neural override protocols that were designed to ensure absolute obedience. Soon, if I didn't complete my mission, the same thing would happen to me. But I couldn't kill Maltheus. Not now. Knowing what I knew about the true nature of his corruption and the real purpose of my mission. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to disobey a direct order from the Officio Assassinorum. The consequences would be worse than death. I spent the next 6 hours preparing for what I knew would be my final act as a Callidus operative. I downloaded copies of all the evidence I'd uncovered, encrypting them with codes that would ensure survival even if my memory was wiped. I prepared dead drop locations throughout the palace where the information could be hidden and eventually discovered by others who might have the courage to act on it. And I wrote a message to Maltheus, warning him of what was coming and giving him the tactical intelligence he would need to prepare his people for the inevitable Imperial response to my failure. When dawn came, I walked into the governor's private chapel wearing my true face for the first time in over a week. The polymorphine treatments had worn off during the night, leaving me as Kaine Vex, failed assassin and traitor to everything I'd once served. Maltheus was alone, kneeling before an altar that combined Imperial iconography with symbols I didn't recognize. Artistic representations of evolution, growth, and change that spoke to something deeper than religious dogma. When he heard my footsteps, he turned without surprise, as if he'd been expecting this moment. "Callidus Temple," he said calmly, studying my enhanced features with those alien eyes. "I wondered when they would send one of you. The question is, are you here to kill me or to learn the truth?" I knelt beside him at the altar, my phase sword remaining sheathed at my side. "Governor, my name is Kaine Vex, and I came here to assassinate you. But I've learned things about this world, about the Imperium, about my own purpose that have changed everything I thought I knew." "The hardest chains to break," Maltheus replied gently, "are the ones forged in our own minds. What will you do now, Kaine Vex?" I looked up at the strange symbols decorating his altar, representations of transformation, of becoming something more than what you were born to be. For 37 years, I had been the Emperor's perfect weapon. Now, perhaps, it was time to become something else entirely. "I'm going to help you prepare for what's coming," I said, "and then I'm going to face the consequences of my failure like a human being instead of a tool." The governor smiled, and for the first time, his alien features looked genuinely warm. "Then, welcome to the family, Brother Kaine. We have work to do." Chapter 4. The Price of Defiance. The retaliation came sooner than either of us expected. 48 hours after I failed to report Maltheus's death, the first orbital bombardment began. I was in the palace command center when the auger arrays detected incoming Imperial Navy vessels translating from the warp. 3 battleships, a dozen cruisers, and enough firepower to crack Korvain Prime's crust if the commanding officers deemed it necessary. The fleet bore the crimson and gold heraldry of Battlefleet Solar, the Imperium's elite naval force, reserved for the most critical operations. "They're not here to negotiate," I told Maltheus as we watched the tactical displays update with targeting solutions and firing coordinates. "Admiral Korvain commands that fleet. I've read his service record. He's authorized 17 exterminatus actions in the past century. If he's here, it means someone very high in the Imperial hierarchy wants this world erased." Maltheus nodded grimly, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to process the tactical data faster than any baseline human could manage. "How long do we have?" "Standard Imperial doctrine calls for a 12-hour ultimatum before planetary bombardment," I replied. "But given the nature of this operation, they might skip the formalities." As if summoned by my words, the main communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Admiral Korvain appeared on the hololithic display, his scarred face bearing the cold authority of absolute Imperial power. Behind him, I could see the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Fury, with dozens of naval officers preparing for combat operations. "Governor Maltheus of Korvain Prime," the Admiral's voice carried across the void with mechanical precision. "By order of the High Lords of Terror, you stand accused of heresy, xenophilia, and corruption of the gene seed of humanity. You will surrender yourself and your senior staff for immediate execution, or this world will be cleansed by fire." Maltheus activated the return transmission, his enhanced features calm despite the magnitude of the threat facing his planet. "Admiral Korvain, I am willing to discuss terms for the protection of Korvain Prime's civilian population. The choices we've made here weren't born from heresy, but from a desire to secure humanity's future. Surely the Imperium can spare time for dialogue before resorting to genocide." Corvanus's expression didn't change. You have corrupted yourself with alien filth and spread that contamination to 30 billion Imperial citizens. There are no terms. There is no dialogue. You have 6 hours to evacuate your command staff from the palace complex before we reduce it to ash. Any attempt to resist or delay will result in immediate planetary sterilization. The transmission ended, leaving us staring at a blank display that represented the death sentence of an entire world. 6 hours, Maltheus murmured. They're not even giving us time to organize proper evacuations. Corvanus intends to minimize survivors who might spread word of what really happened here. I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a physical burden. My failure to complete the assassination had triggered this response, but more than that, my training gave me insights into Imperial military doctrine that could help these people survive what was coming. The bombardment will start with the palace and major industrial centers, I explained, calling up architectural displays of the planet's major population hubs. They'll want to eliminate leadership and production capability first, then systematically reduce resistance. But there are ways to minimize casualties if we act quickly. Over the next 5 hours, I worked with Maltheus and his enhanced staff to implement emergency evacuation protocols based on my knowledge of Imperial tactics. The planet's modified population showed remarkable coordination under pressure. Their genestealer-derived hive mind awareness allowed them to organize complex movements without the communication delays that would have crippled baseline humans. Millions of citizens abandoned the major hive cities for underground shelter complexes that had been prepared years earlier. The Planetary Defense Force, composed entirely of enhanced individuals with superhuman reflexes and tactical coordination, dispersed into guerrilla cells equipped with weapons caches hidden throughout the planet's industrial sectors. But even as we coordinated the resistance efforts, I knew we were only delaying the inevitable. Admiral Corvinus had enough firepower to turn Korvain Prime into a lifeless rock, and the Imperial Navy didn't retreat from committed exterminatus actions. That's when Maltheus revealed the final secret of Korvain Prime's transformation. "There's something you need to see," he told me as we watched the last civilian transports disappear into the planet's extensive tunnel networks. "Something we've been preparing for exactly this scenario." He led me deeper into the palace complex than I'd ever penetrated, through security barriers that would have challenged even my Callidus training. At the deepest level, behind blast doors thick enough to withstand direct nuclear impact, we entered a chamber that defied every assumption I'd made about this world's capabilities. It was a shipyard, a massive underground facility where dozens of vessels were under construction using technology that combined Imperial engineering with innovations derived from genestealer biotechnology. The ships were sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to grow rather than being assembled, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested living metal. "Bioships," Maltheus explained, his voice filled with pride and desperate hope. "Capable of long-range interstellar travel without dependence on the warp or the Astronomicon. We've been building them for 20 years, preparing for the day when the Imperium would try to destroy what we've accomplished here." I stared at the vessels in amazement and horror. This represented technology decades or even centuries ahead of standard Imperial capabilities. If Korvain Prime's enhanced population could escape the planet's destruction, they could establish new colonies beyond the reach of Imperial retribution, spreading their evolutionary advantages throughout the galaxy. But it also represented the ultimate heresy from an Imperial perspective, the deliberate creation of a post-human civilization that could survive and thrive without the Emperor's guidance. "How many people can you evacuate?" I asked. "Perhaps 2 million, Maltheus replied. "A fraction of our total population, but enough to ensure the survival of our genetic legacy and the knowledge we've accumulated." As we spoke, the first orbital bombardments began. The palace structure shook as lance batteries from the Imperial fleet began systematically destroying government buildings and military installations. On the tactical displays, I could see firestorms spreading across the major hive cities as the Admiral carried out his extermination protocols. 30 billion people were dying because I had failed to complete a simple assassination. The guilt would have crushed a baseline human mind, but my enhanced psychology channeled the emotion into tactical focus. If I couldn't prevent this genocide, I could at least ensure that some record of the truth survived to reach others who might learn from Korvain Prime's example. "Governor," I said, making a decision that would define the rest of my existence. "I want to go with you." Maltheus studied my face with those alien eyes, reading emotions and intentions with superhuman perception. "You understand what that means? Once you leave Imperial space aboard one of our ships, you can never return. You'll be marked as a heresy beyond redemption, hunted by every agent of the throne until the end of time." "I'm already dead as far as the Imperium is concerned," I replied. "The Officio Assassinorum doesn't forgive failure, especially failure that costs them an entire planet. But if I come with you, maybe I can help your people avoid the mistakes that led to this disaster." The governor nodded slowly, then activated his command authority to authorize my inclusion in the evacuation manifest. "Welcome to the first wave of humanity's future, Kaine Vex. Let's hope we can make it worthy of the price we've paid." The evacuation took 18 hours under cover of the orbital bombardment. While Admiral Corvanus's fleet systematically reduced Korvain Prime's surface installations to radioactive ash, the bioships slipped away from hidden launch facilities, their organic hulls invisible to Imperial sensors, and their exotic drive systems, leaving no trace that traditional auger arrays could detect. I watched from the observation deck of the lead vessel as Korvain Prime fell behind us, its surface glowing with the heat of planetary bombardment. 30 billion enhanced humans were dying to protect the secret that 2 million of us carried into the void. The knowledge that humanity could become something greater than its current form if it had the courage to embrace change instead of fearing it. But even as we escaped into the darkness between stars, I knew our real trials were just beginning. The Imperium would not simply forget about Korvain Prime. They would investigate what happened here, discover evidence of our escape, and dedicate enormous resources to hunting down every survivor. And somewhere in that pursuing fleet, my former brothers and sisters in the Officio Assassinorum would be preparing new missions, new targets, new ways to ensure that the truth of human evolution would die with us. The war for humanity's future had begun, and I was no longer fighting on the side I'd sworn to serve. Chapter 5: Exile and Evolution. The journey to our new home took 7 months in real space, traveling at velocities that should have been impossible without warp translation. The bioship's exotic drive systems manipulated gravitational fields in ways that Imperial technology couldn't replicate, allowing us to slip between star systems without triggering the psychic disturbances that would have attracted Imperial attention. During those months in transit, I underwent the most profound transformation of my existence. Not just the physical modifications that would allow me to interface with the bioship's living systems, but a complete reconstruction of my understanding of what it meant to be human. The process began with the removal of my Callidus conditioning implants. Dr. Helena Voss, one of the refugees who had pioneered Korvain Prime's genetic modification programs, performed the surgery in the bioship's medical bay while we traveled through the void. I remained conscious throughout the procedure, watching as she carefully extracted decades of neural conditioning from my enhanced brain tissue. "The Officio Assassinorum's methods are remarkably sophisticated," she commented as she worked, her enhanced fingers moving with surgical precision that baseline humans could never achieve. "They've essentially carved pathways through your neural cortex that suppress emotional response and independent thought. Removing them without causing permanent damage requires extreme care. As each implant was extracted, I felt pieces of my original personality returning, like memories surfacing from a deep dream. Curiosity about the universe around me, compassion for other living beings, the capacity for wonder at natural beauty rather than tactical assessment of environmental threats. But the most startling revelation was the return of fear. Not the tactical awareness of danger that had guided my actions as an assassin, but genuine terror at the magnitude of what I had done by betraying the Imperium. "The fear is normal," Dr. Voss assured me as we completed the final stages of the procedure. You're rediscovering emotions that have been suppressed for decades. It will take time for your consciousness to integrate these feelings in healthy ways. The physical modifications came next. Over several weeks, I received genetic treatments that would allow me to interface directly with the bioship systems and survive in environments that would kill baseline humans. My nervous system was enhanced with symbiotic organisms that could process information at superhuman speeds. My cardiovascular system was upgraded with backup organs that could maintain circulation even in the vacuum of space. But unlike the brutal conditioning of the Callidus Temple, these modifications felt like a natural extension of my existing capabilities, rather than a violation of my fundamental humanity. I remained myself, just a better version than I had ever been before. The other refugees welcomed me with a warmth that I struggled to understand at first. To them, I wasn't the failed assassin who had triggered the destruction of their world. I was a brother who had chosen their cause over his conditioning, who had risked everything to stand with them against Imperial tyranny. Among them was Helena Kaine, a former PDF colonel who had commanded Korvain Prime's modified defense forces during the final evacuation. She became my guide during the early weeks of the journey, helping me understand the social dynamics of their enhanced community and the long-term goals of their exodus. "We're not just refugees," she explained as we stood in the bioship's observation gallery, watching stars stream past at impossible velocities. "We're seeds. Each ship in this convoy carries the genetic templates and technical knowledge needed to establish new colonies. Within a generation, we could have a dozen worlds developing along the same evolutionary path that Korvain Prime pioneered. The Imperium will hunt us," I warned her. "They have resources we can't match, and 1,000 years of experience tracking down heretical movements. Eventually, they'll find us." Helena smiled, her enhanced features radiating confidence that would have seemed naive if I didn't know what these people were capable of accomplishing. "Let them come. By then, we'll be strong enough to defend ourselves, and more importantly, we'll have proof that our way works. Thriving colonies that demonstrate humanity's potential for growth beyond the Imperium's limitations." Our destination was a star system designated as Kepler 442 in ancient Imperial charts, located nearly 800 light-years from Korvain Prime, in a region where Imperial presence was minimal. Long-range surveys had identified 3 worlds suitable for human habitation, with resources sufficient to support large-scale colonial development. When we finally arrived, the reality exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The primary world was a paradise of vast continents separated by clean oceans, with atmospheric composition that would support baseline human life, while offering opportunities for enhancement through controlled environmental adaptation. The bioships settled into orbit around this world, which we named Haven, and began the process of establishing our new civilization. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of imperial colonial efforts, our settlement followed organic patterns that allowed each individual to contribute according to their enhanced capabilities and personal interests. I found myself appointed as Chief of Security, responsible for developing defensive measures against the imperial retaliation that would inevitably come. It was ironic. The skills I had learned as an instrument of imperial assassination now served to protect the very people the Imperium would want to destroy. Over the first year on Haven, we established 3 major settlements connected by transportation networks that took advantage of the planet's geography and our enhanced physical capabilities. The cities grew like living organisms, their architecture adapting to local conditions rather than imposing standardized imperial designs. The agricultural settlements were particularly remarkable. Using genetic modifications derived from their genestealer heritage, our farmers could literally communicate with the crops they cultivated, optimizing growth patterns and nutritional content in ways that produced yields far exceeding anything possible with traditional imperial methods. But our greatest achievement was the children. The first generation born on Haven showed capabilities that surpassed even their enhanced parents. They matured faster, learned more efficiently, and displayed creativity and emotional intelligence that suggested humanity's potential for growth was far greater than the Imperium's dogma allowed. I spent countless hours with these children, teaching them about imperial tactics and philosophy not as preparation for war, but as vaccination against the narrow thinking that had nearly destroyed their parents' generation. They needed to understand their enemies not to hate them, but to help them evolve beyond the fear and stagnation that drove imperial persecution. 2 years after our arrival on Haven, the first imperial probe ships appeared at the edge of the system. They were deep-range reconnaissance vessels, probably dispatched from the naval base at Cadia Prime to investigate gravitational anomalies detected by long-range sensors. Standard Imperial procedure would be to conduct passive surveillance for several weeks before reporting back to Fleet Command. I convened an emergency council with Governor Maltheus and the other senior refugees to discuss our response options. The debate revealed fundamental philosophical differences about how to handle Imperial contact. "We should eliminate the probe ships immediately," argued Colonel Kaine, her military instincts focused on operational security. "If they report our presence, we'll face a full naval response within months. Attacking Imperial vessels would only confirm their worst fears about us," countered Dr. Voss. "We should attempt communication, try to demonstrate that we're not the monsters they believe us to be." I studied the tactical displays showing the probe ships' patrol patterns, my enhanced mind automatically calculating firing solutions and engagement scenarios. But for the first time in my life, I found myself considering options beyond violence as the primary response to threats. "There's a third possibility," I said slowly. "We let them observe us, show them what we've accomplished here. Let them see that we're not some corrupted cult waiting to devour their ships and crews." The council debated for hours before reaching consensus. We would not attack the probe ships, but neither would we actively attempt contact. Instead, we would simply continue our normal activities while allowing the Imperial observers to draw their own conclusions about what we had become. It was a dangerous gamble, but one that reflected our fundamental belief that truth would ultimately prevail over fear and ignorance. Over the following weeks, we monitored the probe ships' activities while they conducted detailed scans of our settlements and military capabilities. I could imagine the reports being transmitted back to Imperial Command. Descriptions of cities that seemed to grow like living organisms, defensive systems based on technology decades ahead of Imperial standards, and most disturbing of all, a population that showed clear signs of genetic enhancement while displaying none of the violent instability associated with traditional genestealer cults. When the probe ships finally departed, they carried with them evidence that would force the Imperium to confront an uncomfortable truth. Human evolution was not only possible, but potentially beneficial to the species' long-term survival. The question now was whether that truth would inspire wisdom or trigger an even more violent response from the guardians of Imperial orthodoxy. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. The Imperial response came 18 months later in the form of a massive fleet under the command of Inquisitor Vex of the Ordo Xenos. Unlike Admiral Corvanus's brutal efficiency at Korvain Prime, Coranian represented a more sophisticated approach to dealing with the threat we represented. He didn't come to destroy us, he came to understand us. The fleet that translated into the Haven system consisted of 2 battle barges, 6 strike cruisers, and a dozen escort vessels. Enough firepower to reduce our world to ash, but configured for extended operations rather than immediate bombardment. More tellingly, the fleet included 3 black ships, carrying specialized Adeptus Mechanicus research teams and a full company of Deathwatch Space Marines equipped for xenobiology operations. They intended to study us before deciding our fate. I was in the Planetary Command Center when Inquisitor Coranian's first transmission reached Haven's surface. Unlike the cold ultimatum we had received at Korvain Prime, this message carried the measured authority of someone genuinely interested in dialogue. "Citizens of Haven." The Inquisitor's voice was cultured, educated, bearing the accent of high Gothic nobility. "I am Inquisitor Vex Coranian, acting under the authority of the Golden Throne and the holy orders of the Emperor's Inquisition. You stand accused of heresy, genetic deviation, and corruption by Xenos influence. However, evidence suggests that your situation may be more complex than initial reports indicated. Governor Maltheus activated the return transmission, his enhanced features composed despite the magnitude of the threat now facing our adopted world. Inquisitor Korvain, we welcome dialogue with representatives of the Imperium. We have always remained loyal to the Emperor's vision for humanity, even as we've sought to enhance our capabilities in service to that vision. An interesting perspective, Governor Maltheus, Korvain replied. I propose a meeting under flag of truce. You may bring a small delegation to my flagship, where we can discuss the nature of your modifications and their implications for Imperial policy. The proposal sparked intense debate among our leadership council. Meeting aboard an Imperial vessel would put our senior leaders at tremendous risk, but it also represented the first opportunity in decades to present our case directly to Imperial authority. It's obviously a trap, Colonel Kaine argued. The moment we board their ship, they'll have everything they need to understand our capabilities and weaknesses. We'll be dissected like laboratory specimens. Perhaps, I said, studying the tactical displays that showed the Imperial fleet maintaining position at the edge of the system. But Korvain could have simply ordered bombardment if he wanted us dead. The fact that he's willing to talk suggests the Imperium may be reconsidering its approach to genetic enhancement. After hours of discussion, we agreed to send a small delegation consisting of Governor Maltheus, Dr. Voss, and myself. Our logic was simple. If the Inquisitor intended treachery, losing 3 individuals wouldn't cripple our community's ability to resist. If he genuinely sought understanding, we could provide perspectives that might influence Imperial policy toward our people. The journey to Korvain's flagship took 6 hours aboard one of our smaller bioships. As we approached the massive Imperial vessel, I couldn't help but compare its brutal angular architecture with the organic curves of our own craft. The contrast embodied everything that separated our vision of humanity's future from the Imperium's rigid orthodoxy. The docking procedures were tense but professional. Imperial naval officers escorted us through corridors lined with religious iconography and weapon systems, their faces showing the barely controlled disgust that most Imperial citizens felt when confronted with genetic deviation. But the Inquisitor himself greeted us with surprising courtesy in his private study aboard the vessel. Korvain was a thin man in his 60s, his face bearing the ritual scarification that marked his authority within the Ordo Xenos. But his eyes held intelligence rather than fanaticism, and his first questions focused on the technical details of our modifications rather than theological condemnations. The reports from your former homeworld are unprecedented, he began, gesturing for us to seat ourselves around a conference table decorated with Xenos artifacts from across the galaxy. Controlled genetic modification using Tyranid-derived biological material, integrated with human consciousness, while maintaining individual identity. If the data is accurate, you've achieved something that Magos biologist teams have attempted for millennia. Dr. Voss leaned forward, her enhanced features animated with professional enthusiasm. The key breakthrough was understanding that genestealer genetic material functions as a biological programming language rather than a simple infection vector. By isolating specific sequences and removing the hive mind compulsion elements, we could guide human evolution along beneficial pathways while preserving free will. Fascinating, Korvain murmured, making notes on a data slate that doubtless contained enough information to trigger our execution under normal circumstances. And the psychological effects? Standard doctrine suggests that any exposure to Tyranid biology results in mental corruption and eventual loss of humanity. That's where our approach differed from traditional Imperial methodology, Governor Maltheus explained. Instead of fighting the biological integration, we embraced it while maintaining conscious control over the process. The result is enhanced capability without loss of individual identity. For 3 hours, we discussed the technical, philosophical, and practical implications of our evolutionary path. Korvain's questions were probing but not hostile, suggesting genuine intellectual curiosity about what we had accomplished. But the real test came when he asked to examine our genetic modifications directly. I would like to conduct biological scans of your delegation, he said carefully. With your permission, of course. The data would help confirm or refute the claims made in your technical documentation. I exchanged glances with my companions. Submitting to Imperial medical examination would reveal everything about our capabilities, including tactical advantages we might need if negotiations failed. But refusing would likely end any chance of peaceful resolution. Agreed, Governor Maltheus said after a moment's consideration. But in exchange, we request access to Imperial research on genetic enhancement. If we're to have honest dialogue about humanity's future, both sides should share their knowledge. Korvain smiled for the first time since our arrival. A reasonable request. My Magos biologist would be quite interested in examining your modification techniques. The medical examinations took place in the ship's xenobiology laboratories under the supervision of Tech Adept Theta 9, a heavily augmented servant of the machine god, whose bionic replacements clicked and whirred as he worked. The procedures were comprehensive, but not invasive. Detailed scans of our genetic structure, neurological function, and enhanced physical capabilities. Remarkable! Theta 9's Vox-synthesized voice carried genuine amazement as he reviewed the results. Cellular integration at 97% efficiency. Neural pathway enhancement without degradation of baseline cognitive function. These subjects represent successful human evolution, rather than Xenos corruption. But the most significant revelation came from the Imperial research data that Korvain shared with us. The Imperium had been conducting secret genetic enhancement programs for over 2 centuries, using everything from Eldar genetic templates to carefully controlled exposure to Tyranid biology. Our approach was more successful than anything they had achieved, but we weren't unique in pursuing human evolution. The High Lords of Terror are pragmatic about certain matters, Korvain explained as we reviewed data that would have shocked most Imperial citizens. Humanity faces threats that may require capabilities beyond our current biological limitations. Your methods offer possibilities that we had not previously considered viable. As our discussions continued over several days, it became clear that the Inquisitor faced a profound dilemma. By strict Imperial doctrine, we were heretics deserving immediate execution. But from a practical perspective, we represented potential solutions to problems that had plagued the Imperium for millennia. The resolution came in the form of a proposal that none of us had anticipated. I am prepared to offer your community official Imperial recognition as a specialized research colony, Korvain announced during our final meeting. Your genetic modifications would be classified as sanctioned evolution under inquisitorial authority. In exchange, you would share your enhancement techniques with selected Imperial research facilities and provide enhanced personnel for operations requiring capabilities beyond baseline human norms. It was a devil's bargain. Acceptance into Imperial society at the cost of becoming tools for the same system that had tried to destroy us. But it also represented the possibility of spreading our evolutionary advantages throughout humanity without triggering the violent persecution that had claimed Korvain Prime. We need time to consider your offer, Governor Maltheus replied diplomatically. This decision affects not just our community, but the future direction of human evolution itself. Korvain nodded. Take all the time you need. My fleet will remain in system for 1 standard month while you deliberate. But understand that this opportunity may not arise again. The Imperium's tolerance for deviation has limits, even when that deviation proves beneficial. As we returned to Haven's surface, I found myself grappling with questions that had no easy answers. We had achieved something unprecedented, an Imperial authority figure willing to consider that human evolution might be desirable rather than heretical. But accepting his offer would mean becoming part of the system we had fled, tools for an Imperium that might use our gifts for purposes we couldn't control. The decision we made would determine not just our fate, but the future of human evolution throughout the galaxy. Chapter 7: New Purpose. The debate that followed Inquisitor Korvain's proposal split our community in ways I hadn't anticipated. For weeks, the settlement councils of Haven argued over whether to accept Imperial recognition or maintain our independence as an evolutionary sanctuary beyond the reach of Terra's authority. The arguments on both sides carried weight that made simple decisions impossible. We came here to escape Imperial persecution, Colonel Kaine reminded the assembled council, her enhanced features set in determination. Accepting Korvain's offer means becoming part of the system that destroyed Korvain Prime. How long before they decide our usefulness has ended and move to eliminate us like any other inconvenient tool? Dr. Voss disagreed. Her scientific perspective focused on the broader implications for human development. This is our chance to spread the benefits of controlled evolution throughout Imperial space. If we remain isolated on Haven, our genetic advances die with us. But if we work within Imperial structures, we could guide humanity's development for millennia to come. Governor Maltheus found himself caught between competing visions of our future role in galactic civilization. As the elected leader of our refugee community, he carried the responsibility for decisions that would affect not just our generation, but the children who represented humanity's evolutionary potential. The question isn't whether we trust the Imperium, he said during one particularly heated council session. The question is whether we can use Imperial resources to advance human evolution while protecting our core values and independence. I listened to these debates with growing unease, my enhanced memory providing perfect recall of similar discussions I had witnessed as a Callidus operative. Heretical movements throughout Imperial history had faced identical choices: accommodation or resistance, compromise or principle, survival or integrity. Most had chosen accommodation. Most had eventually been destroyed anyway, once their usefulness to Imperial interests had ended. But there was another factor that complicated our decision-making process: the children. The first generation born on Haven showed capabilities that surpassed even their enhanced parents, but they also displayed a disturbing tendency toward isolation from baseline human emotion and experience. Their enhanced intelligence came with a cost, a growing disconnect from the human concerns that had originally motivated our evolutionary journey. During the third week of debates, I spent time with Marcus Chen, a 12-year-old whose enhanced cognitive abilities allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds but left him struggling to understand why adults showed such emotional investment in philosophical abstractions. Why? Does it matter whether we join the Imperium or remain independent? He asked with the direct curiosity that characterized his generation. Either choice leads to the same outcome. Human evolution continues, just under different organizational structures. Because the path we choose determines what kind of future humanity will have, I explained. The Imperium values order, stability, and control above individual freedom or evolutionary potential. If we become part of their system, they'll shape our development according to their priorities rather than our own. Marcus tilted his head, his enhanced neural patterns processing multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. But our development has already been shaped by survival necessity and resource limitations. True independence is impossible when existence depends on external factors beyond our control. Perhaps integration offers more flexibility than isolation. His words contained a wisdom that troubled me deeply. The enhanced children weren't just smarter than their parents. They were developing fundamentally different approaches to existence that prioritized logical efficiency over emotional attachment to abstract principles like freedom or autonomy. If this represented the natural progression of human evolution, what did it say about the value of the struggles that had brought us to Haven? The answer came from an unexpected source. 3 weeks into our deliberations, a new ship appeared at the edge of the Haven system. Not an Imperial vessel, but one of our own bioships that had departed Korvain Prime during the final evacuation. The ship carried 1,500 refugees who had spent the past 4 years establishing a colony on a world they called Sanctuary, nearly 2,000 light-years from Imperial space. Their message was both inspiring and terrifying. Human evolution was accelerating beyond anything we had anticipated. Captain Sarah Torres, the mission commander, brought recordings that showed Sanctuary's development over 4 years of isolation. The colonists had achieved integration with their planetary ecosystem that bordered on symbiosis. They could communicate directly with native plant life, adapt their biology to environmental changes in real time, and coordinate complex projects through enhanced telepathic networks that spanned their entire population. But they had also lost something essentially human in the process. The recordings showed people who moved with perfect coordination but spoke in harmonized voices, who solved complex problems with supernatural efficiency but showed no individual creativity or emotional spontaneity. Evolution without conscious guidance becomes its own form of slavery. Captain Torres explained as we reviewed the data from Sanctuary. When we removed the constraints that limited human development, we also removed the friction that maintained individual identity. The enhanced children are becoming something magnificent and terrible, a collective consciousness that could reshape the galaxy but might no longer be recognizably human. This revelation reframed our entire debate about Imperial integration. The choice wasn't between freedom and slavery, but between different forms of guided evolution, Imperial control that preserved individual humanity at the cost of developmental limits, or unconstrained growth that might transcend humanity entirely. I found myself thinking about the Emperor's original vision for the species, the dream of psychic evolution that had driven the Great Crusade 10,000 years ago. Perhaps the Imperium's rigid orthodoxy wasn't just about controlling humanity, but about preventing exactly the kind of runaway evolution that Sanctuary represented. After reviewing Captain Torres's data, Governor Maltheus called for a final vote on Inquisitor Coranian's proposal. The debate that followed was briefer than previous discussions, but carried an urgency born from understanding the stakes involved. "We accept Imperial recognition," Maltheus announced to the assembled council, "but with conditions that preserve our ability to guide our own evolutionary development. We become partners in human advancement, not tools for Imperial exploitation." The vote was closer than I had expected. 847 in favor, 712 opposed, with 341 abstentions. But the decision was made, and with it came the responsibility to make our integration with Imperial society succeed without compromising the values that had brought us to Haven. The negotiation process took another month, with teams of Imperial officials working through the legal and practical details of our new status. Inquisitor Coranian proved remarkably flexible in accommodating our concerns, suggesting that higher Imperial authorities were more desperate for our capabilities than initial appearances indicated. The final agreement established Haven as an Adeptus, Mechanicus research facility under inquisitorial oversight, with our population classified as sanctioned abhumans rather than baseline humans. This designation provided legal protection while acknowledging our enhanced capabilities. More importantly, the agreement included provisions for establishing similar colonies on other worlds, spreading our evolutionary advantages throughout selected Imperial systems while maintaining Haven as a central coordination point for human enhancement research. I accepted appointment as Chief Liaison Officer, responsible for coordinating between Haven's enhanced population and Imperial research teams. It was a role that would require all my diplomatic skills and tactical knowledge, balancing the competing interests of two civilizations that viewed humanity's future through fundamentally different philosophical frameworks. The first Imperial research team arrived 6 months after the agreement was signed. They were led by Magos biologist Theta 7, a heavily augmented servant of the machine god whose interest in our enhancement techniques bordered on obsession. "Fascinating," he repeated constantly as he examined our genetic modification procedures, his mechadendrites clicking with excitement as he recorded data that would reshape Imperial understanding of human potential. "The integration efficiency exceeds all theoretical projections. How do you maintain individual consciousness during the synaptic restructuring process?" Working with Imperial scientists forced me to confront the limitations of our own understanding. While we had achieved remarkable results through intuition and careful experimentation, they brought theoretical frameworks and technological resources that could accelerate our development exponentially. But they also brought Imperial priorities that sometimes conflicted with our values. When Theta 7 proposed using our enhancement techniques to create specialized soldier variants optimized for different combat environments, I had to carefully explain why we considered that application ethically problematic. "Enhanced humans aren't weapons to be manufactured for specific purposes," I told him during one particularly tense discussion. "They're people with their own desires, goals, and rights. The moment we start treating them as tools, we repeat the mistakes that led to our exile from Imperial space." "But surely, the defense of humanity justifies some compromise of individual autonomy," he argued, his voice synthesizer modulating to express confusion. "Your enhancements could produce warriors capable of defeating threats that normal humans cannot survive. And when those threats are eliminated, what happens to the warriors?" I countered. "Do they retire to peaceful lives, or do Imperial authorities find new enemies that require their specialized capabilities? We've seen what happens when the Imperium creates tools it cannot control." These philosophical debates became a constant feature of our collaboration with Imperial research teams. We shared our technical knowledge freely, but insisted on maintaining ethical oversight of how that knowledge was applied. It was a delicate balance that required constant vigilance to prevent our evolutionary gifts from being perverted into instruments of oppression. Despite the challenges, our partnership with the Imperium began producing remarkable results. Within 2 years of the initial agreement, we had established 3 additional research colonies and begun training programs that allowed selected Imperial citizens to undergo controlled enhancement procedures. The enhanced Imperial operatives showed capabilities that exceeded even our most optimistic projections. They could survive in environments that would kill baseline humans, process information at superhuman speeds, and coordinate complex operations with a precision that traditional Imperial forces couldn't match. But they also retained their individual personalities and emotional connections, avoiding the collective consciousness trap that had consumed Sanctuary's population. Our careful guidance ensured that enhanced humans remained human, even as they transcended previous biological limitations. As I watched these new enhanced individuals take their places in Imperial society, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my days as a Callidus operative: pride in a mission successfully completed. We had achieved what seemed impossible: evolution within Imperial structures, guided by human values rather than blind biological imperative. The failed assassin who had triggered the destruction of Korvain Prime had found a new purpose in life, shepherding humanity toward a future that honored both its origins and its potential for growth. The integration of Imperial research teams into our community brought unexpected complications that forced us to confront the fundamental differences between our evolutionary philosophy and the Imperium's utilitarian approach to human enhancement. While Magos biologist Theta 7 and his colleagues showed genuine scientific curiosity about our methods, their underlying assumptions about the purpose of human modification created constant friction with our ethical frameworks. The first major conflict arose 6 months after the research partnership began, when Theta 7 proposed using our enhancement techniques to create what he called specialized human variants for different Imperial functions. His detailed specifications read like a catalogue of living tools: enhanced humans, optimized for zero-gravity construction work, others modified for survival in toxic environments, and most disturbing of all, variants designed specifically for expendable reconnaissance missions in hostile territory. The efficiency gains would be remarkable, he explained during a presentation to our Joint Research Council, his mechadendrites clicking as they interfaced with holographic displays showing his proposed modifications. Instead of training baseline humans for dangerous specialties and accepting high casualty rates, we could create purpose-built variants who excel in their designated functions while requiring minimal support infrastructure. Dr. Voth's response was immediate and sharp. "You're describing the creation of subhuman castes, Magos. These variants would be people with hopes, dreams, and desires of their own. What happens when a reconnaissance specialist decides they want to be an artist instead? What rights do they have to refuse dangerous missions?" The question exposed the philosophical chasm between Imperial efficiency and our commitment to individual autonomy. Theta 7's proposal assumed that enhanced humans could be designed for specific purposes and would naturally accept their designated roles. Our experience suggested that enhancement increased rather than decreased individual agency and creative potential. The debate consumed weeks of council meetings and private discussions, with enhanced and baseline members of our community arguing passionately about the ethical implications of purpose-specific modification. Some supported limited specialization that would allow individuals to excel in chosen fields, while others feared any movement toward treating enhanced humans as manufactured solutions to Imperial problems. I found myself mediating between perspectives that reflected deeper questions about human nature and social organization. The Imperial approach prioritized collective benefit over individual choice, while our community valued personal autonomy even when it reduced overall efficiency. The resolution came from an unexpected source: the enhanced children themselves. Led by Marcus Chen, now 14, and already showing leadership capabilities that surpassed many adults, they proposed a compromise that satisfied both Imperial needs and our ethical concerns. Why not let people choose their own specializations? Marcus suggested during a joint council session. Instead of designing humans for specific purposes, design enhancement packages that people can select based on their interests and goals. Someone who wants to work in space construction can choose modifications that help them excel at that work, but they retain the right to change their mind and pursue different paths. His proposal reframed the entire debate by emphasizing choice rather than design. Enhanced individuals could develop specialized capabilities, but those capabilities would reflect personal decisions rather than imposed limitations. The approach preserved individual autonomy while providing the Imperial specialized personnel they needed. Implementation of the choice-based specialization system required developing dozens of different enhancement packages, each optimized for specific environments or activities, but compatible with baseline human psychology and social integration. The process took 2 years of careful research and testing, but the results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Enhanced individuals who chose their own modifications showed remarkable dedication to their selected specialties while maintaining the flexibility to adapt when circumstances changed. A zero-gravity construction specialist might later decide to pursue xenobiology research, using their enhanced spatial reasoning and environmental adaptation as advantages in their new field. More importantly, the system demonstrated that enhanced humans could serve Imperial needs without sacrificing their humanity. Specialized modifications became tools for personal achievement, rather than chains binding individuals to predetermined roles. The success of our compromise with Imperial research. Teams led to requests for establishing similar partnerships throughout the sector. Within 3 years of our initial agreement with Inquisitor Korvain, we were coordinating enhancement programs on 17 different worlds, each adapted to local conditions and cultural frameworks. The diversity of these programs revealed both the flexibility of our enhancement techniques and the challenges of maintaining ethical standards across different Imperial institutions. The Adeptus Mechanicus facilities focused on technological integration, allowing enhanced humans to interface directly with machine systems while preserving organic consciousness. The Imperial Guard training worlds emphasized physical capabilities and tactical coordination that would improve military effectiveness. Without creating super soldiers who might threaten Imperial authority, most complex were the partnerships with navigator houses, the ancient bloodlines who guided Imperial ships through the warp, using hereditary psychic abilities. The navigators had practiced controlled genetic modification for millennia, but their techniques focused on preserving specific bloodline traits rather than expanding human potential. House Corvanis, led by Navigator Primaris Elena Corvanis, approached us with a proposal that challenged our understanding of both enhancement and Imperial society. "Our bloodlines are failing," she explained during a private meeting in her family's ancestral chambers aboard their fortress ship. "Each generation shows weaker psychic abilities and greater vulnerability to warp corruption. We need new approaches to genetic stability that preserve our navigator capabilities while strengthening our resistance to chaos." Influence. The request required developing enhancement techniques that could work with existing navigator genetics without disrupting the delicate psychic mutations that allowed warp sight. It was perhaps the most technically challenging project we had undertaken, requiring months of careful study and experimental procedures. But the collaboration with House Corvanis also provided insights into Imperial society that changed my understanding of our place within the broader human community. The Emperor's Great Crusade succeeded because it built upon foundations laid by previous civilizations. Navigator Primaris Corvanis explained as we reviewed ancient genetic records that documented navigator bloodline development. Enhancement isn't about abandoning human heritage, it's about building upon that heritage to achieve greater things. Her perspective helped resolve internal debates within our own community about the relationship between enhancement and human tradition. Some of our people had begun to view baseline humanity as an evolutionary dead end, something to be transcended rather than preserved. The Navigator example showed that enhancement could honor human history while expanding human possibilities. Working with Navigator genetics also revealed unexpected connections between our enhancement techniques and the psychic abilities that had always been part of human potential. Enhanced individuals showed increased psychic sensitivity and resistance to warp corruption, suggesting that our modifications were awakening latent capabilities rather than creating entirely new ones. This discovery led to collaboration with the Scholastica Psychona, the Imperial organization responsible for training and monitoring human psychics. Primaris Psychoner Magnus Vel approached us with cautious interest in enhancement techniques that might improve psychic training outcomes while reducing the risks of chaos corruption. 40% of psychic candidates suffer catastrophic failure during training, he explained during our initial meeting on the fortress world of Titan. Most die from warp, exposure, or possession by demonic entities. If enhancement techniques could improve survival rates, the benefit to Imperial psychic capabilities would be immeasurable. The collaboration with the Scholastica Psychoner proved both rewarding and terrifying. Enhanced psychics showed remarkable abilities to channel warp energy without suffering the madness and corruption that plagued many baseline psychers. But they also demonstrated new forms of psychic potential that challenged Imperial understanding of human limitations. Enhanced psychers could communicate telepathically across interstellar distances, manipulate matter at the molecular level through psychic force, and most remarkably perceive and interact with dimensions beyond normal space-time. These capabilities suggested that human psychic evolution could progress far beyond current Imperial classifications. But with greater power came greater risk. Enhanced psychers attracted attention from warp entities that were more sophisticated and dangerous than the demons that typically threatened baseline psychics. We documented several incidents of enhanced psychers being contacted by entities that claimed to represent higher forms of consciousness seeking to guide human evolution along paths that led, inevitably, to chaos corruption. The solution required developing new forms of psychic shielding that could protect enhanced minds from advanced warp predators. Working with the Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines, we created psychic barriers that combine technological components with spiritual disciplines derived from the Emperor's own psychic teachings. The protective techniques proved effective, but their development revealed disturbing truths about the nature of psychic evolution. Enhanced psychers weren't just more powerful than their baseline counterparts. They were evolving toward capabilities that resembled those attributed to the Emperor himself during the Great Crusade. This realization forced us to confront questions that went to the heart of Imperial ideology and human destiny. If enhanced humans were developing godlike psychic abilities, what did that mean for their relationship with the Emperor and the Imperium he had created? Were we fulfilling his vision for humanity's future, or were we creating potential rivals to his authority? The answer came from an unexpected source: direct communication with the Emperor himself. I was conducting routine psychic shielding exercises with a group of enhanced psychers when one of them, a young woman named Kaine Vex, who had been enhanced from birth, suddenly stiffened and spoke in a voice that resonated with authority beyond anything I had ever experienced. "My children," the voice spoke through Sarah's enhanced vocal cords, "your path honors the vision I held when humanity first reached for the stars. Enhancement guided by wisdom serves the greater purpose that has always driven our species toward transcendence." The communication lasted only minutes, but its implications reverberated through our entire community. The Emperor himself had acknowledged our work as consistent with his original vision for humanity. Enhanced humans weren't rebels against Imperial authority. They were fulfillment of the Emperor's deepest hopes for our species' development. But the divine endorsement also brought new responsibilities. If we were truly carrying forward the Emperor's vision, we needed to ensure that our enhancement programs served the greater good of humanity, rather than just the interests of enhanced individuals. This realization led to the establishment of the Imperial Enhancement Covenant, a formal agreement between our research network and the highest levels of Imperial authority. The Covenant recognized enhanced humans as loyal Imperial citizens while establishing frameworks for their integration into existing institutions. Under the Covenant, enhanced individuals could serve in any Imperial organization, but they were also bound by additional obligations to use their capabilities in service to the common good. Enhanced Space Marines would receive specialized training to lead baseline units more effectively. Enhanced administrators would focus on improving conditions for all Imperial citizens rather than just advancing their own careers. Most importantly, the Covenant established enhanced humans as guardians of Imperial values rather than challengers to Imperial authority. Our superhuman capabilities came with superhuman responsibilities to protect and guide the broader human community. The implementation of the Imperial Enhancement Covenant marked a turning point in our relationship with Imperial society. Instead of being viewed as dangerous deviants, enhanced humans began to be seen as exemplars of human potential, guided by traditional Imperial virtues. The change in perception was most evident in recruitment patterns for enhancement programs. Instead of drawing primarily from desperate refugees and willing volunteers, we began receiving applications from the most distinguished members of Imperial society. Veteran Space Marines seeking to better serve their chapters, planetary governors wanting to improve their ability to lead their worlds, even members of the High Lords of Terror exploring ways to enhance their own capabilities. But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of enhanced children who had been born into traditional Imperial families and raised with both enhancement capabilities and conventional Imperial values. These young people represented the first generation of truly integrated enhanced humans, individuals who saw no conflict between their superhuman abilities and their loyalty to the Emperor and Imperium. Among them was Marcus, Chen's younger sister Diana, who had been enhanced from conception using techniques that integrated seamlessly with normal human development. At 12 years old, she already showed capabilities that exceeded most adult enhanced humans, but she also demonstrated unwavering devotion to Imperial ideals and deep emotional connections to both enhanced and baseline members of her community. Being enhanced doesn't make me different from other people, she explained during an interview for an Imperial documentary about our programs. It just gives me better tools to help everyone achieve their goals. The Emperor wants all of his children to reach their potential, and enhancement helps us do that while staying true to what makes us human. Her words captured the essence of what we had achieved. Enhancement that strengthened rather than replaced human nature. Evolution that served traditional values rather than abandoning them. Progress that honored the past while building toward a better future. As I reflect on the transformation of our relationship with Imperial society over the past decade, I'm struck by how completely our situation has changed from those desperate early days on Haven. We began as refugees fleeing Imperial persecution, convinced that our survival required hiding from the very civilization we sought to improve. Now we serve as leaders in humanity's greatest evolutionary leap, working within Imperial institutions to guide our species toward capabilities that honor both our potential and our heritage. The failed assassin who once served only destruction has become an architect of transformation that serves life itself. But the work is far from complete. Each new enhanced individual represents both an achievement and a responsibility. Proof that human evolution can be guided by wisdom and compassion, but also a reminder that our greatest powers mean nothing without the moral framework to use them properly. The future we're building will be shaped by how well we balance enhancement with humanity, progress with tradition, individual potential with collective responsibility. It's a delicate balance that requires constant attention and careful judgment. But it's also humanity's best hope for achieving the greatness that has always been within our reach. Chapter 8. Legacy of Change. 23 years have passed since I first failed to kill Governor Maltheus, and the galaxy has changed in ways that none of us could have predicted when we first established our colony on Haven. What began as a desperate refuge for genetic outcasts has become the foundation for humanity's greatest evolutionary leap since the dark age of technology. I write these words from my study aboard the research station New Evolution, orbiting the ninth world to receive Imperial sanction for controlled human enhancement programs. Through the viewing portal, I can see the planet Ascension below, a thriving world of 15 million enhanced humans who represent the cutting edge of our species' development. The children born on Ascension show capabilities that surpass even Haven's second generation. They can interface directly with machine systems through bioelectric fields, communicate across interstellar distances through quantum-entangled neural networks, and adapt their biology to survive in environments that would challenge even space marines. Yet they remain recognizably human, driven by curiosity, compassion, and the complex emotions that define our species. This morning's reports bring news from across the expanding network of enhancement colonies. The research facility on Prometheus has achieved breakthrough integration between human neural patterns and artificial intelligence systems, creating hybrid consciousness that combines organic creativity with digital processing power. The agricultural worlds of New Eden have developed symbiotic relationships with their ecosystems that have increased food production by 40% while eliminating all forms of environmental degradation. Most significantly, the enhanced warriors trained on Valor's Point have proven themselves in combat against threats that would have overwhelmed traditional Imperial forces. Last month, a single company of enhanced soldiers successfully eliminated a genestealer cult that had infested 3 star systems, using their superior capabilities and coordinated tactics to achieve victory without requiring exterminatus protocols. But success has brought new challenges that test the philosophical foundations of everything we've built. The Imperium's enthusiasm for human enhancement has led to pressure for mass production of enhanced individuals, with some officials arguing that the entire population of humanity should undergo modification as quickly as possible. They see our evolutionary advances as weapons in the eternal war against chaos, Xenos threats, and internal rebellion. We could enhance 1 billion citizens within a decade, High Lord Militant Kruger argued during last month's coordination conference on terror. Imagine space marine capabilities distributed across entire planetary populations. The Imperium would become invincible. I opposed this proposal with arguments that our experience had taught us were essential for successful enhancement programs. Mass production of enhanced humans would overwhelm our ability to provide proper guidance and ethical oversight. I explained to the assembled High Lords, without careful individual attention during the enhancement process, we risk creating exactly the kind of collective consciousness that would threaten human individuality. The debate revealed fundamental tensions between Imperial priorities and our commitment to preserving human values during evolutionary development. The Imperium wanted tools for victory in their endless wars. We wanted to shepherd humanity toward its highest potential while maintaining the characteristics that made the species worth preserving. These philosophical conflicts became acute when we discovered what had happened to the sanctuary colony that Captain Torres had warned us about decades earlier. The enhanced humans of Sanctuary had continued their unconstrained evolution, developing capabilities that bordered on godlike power. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level, communicate across galactic distances through pure thought, and coordinate projects of staggering complexity through their collective consciousness network. But they had also lost all connection to their human origins. When Imperial exploration fleets finally located Sanctuary, they found a world populated by beings who no longer recognized individual identity as meaningful, who viewed the rest of humanity as primitive precursors to be either enhanced or eliminated. The Sanctuary Collective's first communication with Imperial authorities was both fascinating and terrifying. Your species approaches evolutionary obsolescence. Submit to integration with our consciousness network, or accept classification as a protected but primitive subspecies restricted to designated reservation worlds. The Imperial response was swift and decisive. Admiral Korvain, the same officer who had destroyed Korvain Prime, led a massive fleet to Sanctuary and implemented complete planetary sterilization protocols. 1,500 enhanced humans who had achieved capabilities beyond imagination were reduced to radioactive ash because they no longer qualified as human. Under any definition that Imperial society could accept, the destruction of Sanctuary sent shockwaves through our enhancement research network. If unconstrained evolution led to the elimination of human identity, and Imperial mass production threatened to overwhelm our ethical safeguards, what path could we follow that preserved both human enhancement and human nature? The answer came from an unexpected source: the enhanced children themselves. Marcus Chen, now 35 and serving as Director of Philosophical Studies at Haven's Research Institute, proposed a solution that combined scientific advancement with humanitarian wisdom. We establish evolutionary limits, he suggested during a conference that brought together enhanced individuals from across our network. Conscious boundaries that prevent runaway development, while maximizing beneficial adaptation. The proposal involved creating what he called evolutionary constitutions, formal documents that define the characteristics essential to human identity and establish legal protections against modifications that would compromise those traits. Enhanced individuals would gain superhuman capabilities, but within frameworks that preserved individual consciousness, emotional complexity, and moral reasoning. Evolution without purpose becomes its own form of slavery, Marcus explained, echoing Captain Torres's warnings from decades earlier. But evolution guided by conscious choice and ethical principles can achieve the best of both possibilities: enhanced capability within preserved humanity. The implementation of evolutionary constitutions required Collaboration between enhanced philosophers, imperial legal scholars, and religious authorities who could provide spiritual guidance for humanity's development. The process took 5 years of debate and negotiation, but resulted in frameworks that satisfied both imperial security concerns and our commitment to preserving human values. Under the new protocols, enhancement candidates undergo extensive psychological evaluation to ensure they can maintain individual identity during the modification process. The enhancement procedures themselves are limited to specific capability improvements that don't compromise core human characteristics like creativity, empathy, and independent reasoning. Most importantly, enhanced individuals retain the right to refuse further modifications, ensuring that evolution remains a choice rather than an inevitable biological imperative. The success of our constitutional approach has led to its adoption throughout imperial space, with enhancement colonies established in every major sector, and millions of humans voluntarily undergoing controlled evolutionary development. The enhanced population now numbers over 50 million individuals who serve in roles ranging from deep space exploration to xenobiology research to frontline combat operations. But perhaps our greatest achievement has been proving that human evolution can be guided by human values, rather than biological determinism or imperial necessity. Enhanced individuals continue to create art, form families, pursue personal dreams, and make individual choices about their lives and futures. They remain human, just better versions of what humanity can become. As I complete this testimony, I reflect on the strange path that brought me from Imperial Assassin to Guardian of Human Evolution. My failure to kill Governor Maltheus condemned 30 billion people to death, but it also opened possibilities for human development that have benefited countless generations. The guilt of Korvain Prime's destruction will never leave me, but it has been balanced by the knowledge that their sacrifice made possible something unprecedented in human history: conscious control over our species' evolutionary destiny. To anyone who might read this record in years to come, understand that the choices we make today determine what humanity becomes tomorrow. Evolution is not something that happens to us. It's something we do to ourselves, guided by our values, limited by our wisdom, and shaped by our courage to become more than what we were born to be. The Imperium fears change because change brings uncertainty, and uncertainty threatens control. But controlled change, guided by human wisdom and constrained by human values, offers our species the only path to true greatness. We are no longer the primitive warriors who conquered the galaxy through violence and ignorance. We are becoming something greater, humans who have chosen to enhance their capabilities while preserving their souls. The future belongs to those who have the courage to evolve while remaining true to what makes them human. This is my testimony. This is my warning. This is my hope for what humanity can become. The Emperor protects, but more importantly, the Emperor expects us to protect ourselves by becoming worthy of protection. The transformation of imperial society has accelerated beyond our most optimistic projections, but it has also revealed challenges that threaten to undermine everything we've accomplished. As enhanced humans integrate into traditional imperial structures, we face resistance from institutions that have remained unchanged for 10 millennia. The Adeptus Ministorum has declared our enhancement programs to be spiritual contamination, arguing that genetic modification corrupts the divine essence of humanity that the Emperor intended to preserve. Cardinal Voss, speaking from the Ecclesiarchy's pulpit on Holy Terror, denounced enhanced humans as abominations wearing human faces, their souls polluted by Xenos taint that no amount of purity seals can cleanse. His words carry weight among baseline Imperial citizens who fear change more than death itself. Across the Imperium, we've documented 17 incidents of enhanced individuals being attacked by religious zealots convinced they were performing the Emperor's will. 3 of our research facilities have been subjected to purification riots that destroyed years of careful scientific work. The most tragic incident occurred on the agri-world of Demeter's Rest, where enhanced farmers had increased crop yields by 400% through symbiotic integration with local ecosystems. A mob of baseline citizens, inflamed by Ministorum propaganda about genetic heresy, burned the enhanced agricultural workers alive in their own fields, destroying both the harvest and the people who had made it possible. I stood in those burned fields afterward, watching black smoke rise from soil that had been made fertile by the sacrifice of people who wanted nothing more than to feed their fellow humans. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. The same religious fervor that had driven the Great Crusade now threatened to destroy humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. But the religious opposition, while painful, was predictable. More dangerous has been the emergence of what we call enhancement supremacism among some enhanced individuals, who believe their capabilities give them the right to rule over baseline humanity. The problem first manifested on New Sparta, one of our military training worlds, where enhanced warriors learn to use their superhuman abilities in service to the Imperium. A group of enhanced soldiers, led by former PDF Colonel Victor Hain, began advocating for the natural dominance of enhanced humans over their unmodified cousins. We are stronger, faster, smarter, and more capable in every measurable way, Hain argued during a gathering that we later learned was planning a coup against New Sparta's baseline government. Why should we submit to the authority of primitives who cannot match our capabilities? The enhanced are humanity's future. It's time we acted like it. The conspiracy was discovered before it could be implemented, but the investigation revealed a disturbing network of enhanced individuals who shared Hain's supremacist ideology. Across 12 worlds, we found evidence of enhanced humans using their capabilities to manipulate baseline citizens, accumulate power, and gradually undermine democratic institutions. The crisis forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Enhancement without wisdom creates tyrants more dangerous than any baseline despot. Physical and mental capabilities mean nothing without the moral framework to use them responsibly. Our response was swift and comprehensive. We established the Ethics Oversight Council, composed of both enhanced and baseline humans, with authority to investigate reports of enhancement abuse and impose sanctions ranging from additional training to permanent exile from enhanced communities. We also implemented mandatory ethics courses for all enhancement candidates, ensuring that increased capabilities came with increased responsibility. Most importantly, we created the Baseline Protection Charter, a formal document guaranteeing the rights and dignity of unmodified humans within enhanced society. The Charter established legal penalties for using enhancement capabilities to coerce, manipulate, or harm baseline citizens, and created oversight mechanisms to ensure these protections were enforced. The supremacist movement collapsed within months of these reforms, but its existence reminded us that human nature, both its nobility and its capacity for corruption, transcends biological enhancement. Power corrupts regardless of whether that power comes from political authority, genetic modification, or simple physical strength. These internal challenges were complicated by external threats that tested our enhanced capabilities in ways we had never anticipated. The emergence of the Tyranid Hive Fleet Moloch in the Eastern Fringe created the first opportunity for large-scale deployment of enhanced human forces against a galactic-level threat. The initial reports from the contact zones were terrifying. Hive Fleet Moloch showed adaptation capabilities that surpassed previous Tyranid incursions, with bioforms that seemed specifically designed to counter traditional Imperial tactics. Space Marine companies were overwhelmed by creatures that could match their speed and strength while demonstrating tactical intelligence that suggested direct battlefield learning. When the call came for enhanced human intervention, I found myself appointed as strategic coordinator for Operation Genesis, the largest deployment of enhanced forces in Imperial history. 12,000 enhanced warriors, scientists, and support personnel were assembled from across our research network, representing the finest examples of controlled human evolution. The campaign that followed redefined what was possible in warfare against Xenos threats. Enhanced soldiers demonstrated capabilities that exceeded even our projections, adapting their tactics in real time to counter Tyranid evolution, coordinating complex operations through quantum-entangled neural networks, and surviving in combat environments that would have destroyed baseline human forces. But the real breakthrough came from enhanced xenobiologists who could interface directly with Tyranid organisms, understanding their biological functions at a level that allowed for unprecedented countermeasures. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an enhanced researcher from Haven's Biological Warfare Division, successfully developed targeted pathogens that could disrupt Tyranid hive mind communication without affecting human neural systems. The key insight, she explained during our post-campaign analysis, was understanding that tyrannid adaptation follows predictable patterns based on survival optimization. Enhanced humans can process these patterns faster than the organisms can implement counter-adaptations, giving us a tactical advantage that baseline forces could never achieve. The success of Operation Genesis came at a cost that reminded us of our responsibilities to both enhanced and baseline humanity. We lost 847 enhanced personnel during the campaign, each death representing decades of careful enhancement work and irreplaceable contributions to human evolution. But their sacrifice saved 17 worlds and prevented Hive Fleet Moloch from consuming an estimated 40 billion Imperial citizens. The victory also demonstrated the strategic value of enhanced humans to Imperial leadership, leading to increased support for our research programs, but also pressure to accelerate enhancement procedures beyond safe parameters. High Lord Admiral Spire argued for emergency enhancement, protocols that would modify entire planetary populations within months rather than the careful years-long process we had developed. We cannot afford the luxury of gradual enhancement while Xenos threats multiply across the galaxy. Spire declared during a High Lords Council meeting that I attended via hololith projection. Operation Genesis proved that enhanced humans can achieve decisive victories against impossible odds. We need millions of them, not thousands. I opposed this proposal with every argument at my disposal, but I could see the temptation in the faces of Imperial officials who viewed enhanced humans as the ultimate solution to threats that had plagued the Imperium for millennia. The success of our careful ethical approach had made it more difficult to resist demands for dangerous shortcuts. The debate reached crisis proportions when intelligence reports revealed that chaos forces were attempting to corrupt enhanced humans through methods specifically designed to exploit their genetic modifications. The Thousand Sons Sorcerer Lord Magnus Vex had apparently developed psychic techniques that could turn enhanced individuals into weapons against their own communities. The first confirmed case occurred on the research world of Prometheus, where enhanced scientist Dr. Thomas Krell began exhibiting signs of chaos corruption that manifested through his genetic modifications. Instead of the usual visual markers of chaos taint, Krell's enhancement-derived abilities became conduits for warp energy that allowed him to manipulate other enhanced individuals through their quantum neural connections. The corruption spread through Prometheus's enhanced population like a virus, turning their greatest strengths into vectors for chaos influence. Within days, the entire research facility had fallen to what appeared to be voluntary submission to the ruinous powers. The Imperial response was predictably brutal. Admiral Korvain, now promoted to Sector Fleet Command, implemented complete orbital bombardment of Prometheus, reducing the planet to a lifeless rock to prevent the corruption from spreading further. But the loss of Prometheus raised terrifying questions about the vulnerability of enhanced humans to chaos influence. If genetic modification created new pathways for corruption, were we inadvertently making humanity more susceptible to the very threats we were trying to combat? The investigation that followed revealed both the scope of the threat and potential solutions. Enhanced individuals were indeed more vulnerable to certain forms of chaos corruption, particularly those that targeted the quantum neural networks that enabled their advanced capabilities. But they were also more resistant to traditional corruption methods, suggesting that enhancement created both weaknesses and strengths in humanity's spiritual defenses. Working with the Grey Knights, chapter of Space Marines, we developed psychic shielding techniques specifically designed to protect enhanced neural networks from chaos intrusion. The process required implanting psychically active crystals harvested from dead Grey Knights, creating spiritual barriers that could resist even the most sophisticated chaos corruption attempts. The shielding program became mandatory for all enhanced individuals, adding months to the enhancement process, but providing protection that proved effective against subsequent chaos infiltration attempts. When Sorcerer Lord Magnus Vex attempted to corrupt the enhanced warriors of New Sparta, his psychic attacks were completely neutralized by the crystalline implants we had developed. But perhaps the most significant challenge we faced came from an unexpected source: the enhanced children of Haven's third generation, who were developing capabilities that exceeded even our enhanced projections. These children, now young adults, showed abilities that bordered on the supernatural. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, communicate across interstellar distances through pure thought, and process information at speeds that approached machine-like efficiency. Yet unlike the Sanctuary Collective, they maintained individual personalities and emotional connections to their families and communities. The problem arose when they began questioning the artificial limitations we had imposed on human enhancement. Led by Sarah Chen, Marcus's daughter and a brilliant philosopher in her own right, they argued that evolutionary constitutions were unnecessary restrictions that prevented humanity from achieving its true potential. Why should we limit ourselves based on outdated definitions of human nature? Sarah asked during a heated debate at Haven's council chambers. The characteristics you call essentially human are just evolutionary accidents from our primitive past. We could transcend pain, suffering, death itself if we weren't bound by arbitrary philosophical constraints. Her arguments were seductive and terrifying in equal measure. The third generation had capabilities that could solve problems that had plagued humanity since its origins. Disease, aging, resource scarcity, even the fundamental limitations of human consciousness itself. But they also displayed a detachment from human emotion and experience that reminded me uncomfortably of the Sanctuary Collective. The debate that followed split our community more deeply than any external threat we had faced. The older generations of enhanced humans wanted to maintain the constitutional limitations that preserved human nature. The youngest generation saw those limitations as obstacles to transcendence that served no useful purpose. I found myself caught between competing visions of humanity's future, my own enhanced capabilities allowing me to see merit in both perspectives, while my memories of baseline humanity made me fear the loss of characteristics that defined our species. The resolution came from an unexpected source: the enhanced children's own experiences with love, loss, and personal growth. Despite their superhuman capabilities, they still formed deep emotional attachments, grieved when friends died, and struggled with questions of purpose and meaning that had challenged humans for millennia. Maybe the point isn't to transcend human nature, Sarah admitted during one of our private conversations. Maybe the point is to enhance it while keeping what makes it worth having. Power without connection is just sophisticated emptiness. Her insight led to a new approach that we called conscious evolution, enhancement programs that explicitly preserved and strengthened human emotional and social connections, while expanding physical and mental capabilities. Instead of viewing human nature as a limitation to overcome, we began treating it as a foundation to build upon. The success of this approach has become the model for all subsequent enhancement programs. Enhanced humans gain superhuman capabilities, but they also develop deeper capacity for love, empathy, creativity, and spiritual connection. They become more human rather than less, embodying the best characteristics of our species while transcending its biological limitations. As I write these final words, 30 years after my failure as a Callidus assassin, I can see the fruits of our careful work spreading across the galaxy. Enhanced humans serve in every aspect of Imperial society, as warriors, scientists, artists, teachers, and leaders who guide humanity toward a future that honors both its potential and its origins. The Imperium still fears change, but it has learned to channel that fear into careful guidance rather than blind destruction. Enhanced humans have proven themselves loyal to the Emperor's vision, while expanding what that vision could mean for our species' future. But perhaps most importantly, we have demonstrated that evolution guided by human wisdom and constrained by human values can achieve greatness without sacrificing the characteristics that make greatness worth pursuing. The failed assassin, who once served only death, has become a guardian of life's greatest possibilities, and in that transformation, I have found the redemption that eluded me for so many years in service to an empire that feared its own potential. The future remains unwritten, but it will be written by humans who chose to become more than they were while remaining true to what they are. This is our gift to the generations who will inherit the stars. The knowledge that change and tradition, evolution and humanity, can coexist in service to something greater than either could achieve alone. The Emperor protects, but more importantly, the Emperor expects us to protect ourselves by becoming worthy of the future we choose to create.